Welcome to Modern Conception, a new era of fertility decoded. I am Brittney Sobel of It Is Sloane.
And I'm Amanda Zurawski, also of It Is Sloane.
And we are joined by Dr. Jen Lincoln. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm going to introduce you. So Dr. Jennifer Lincoln is a board-certified OB-GYN who is passionate about helping girls, women, and those assigned female at birth understand their bodies and feel empowered to advocate for themselves. She practices as an OB hospitalist in Portland, Oregon, and also uses social media to educate, advocate, and bust the many myths surrounding vaginal and reproductive health with her community of over 4 million followers. I didn't realize it was 4 million. It's crazy. Wow. In the wake of the Dobbs decision leak, Dr. Lincoln founded the website 3 for Freedom, a hub that spreads awareness about the availability of mail-order birth control, emergency contraception, and abortion pills in all 50 states. She is an author, regular media contributor, and president-elect for the Society of OB-GYN Hospitalists. She received her undergraduate degree from Washington College and her medical degree from Tulane, which I just visited, love that school, before completing her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Oregon Health and Science University. Wow, quite impressive, quite impressive. So as an icebreaker, Amanda and I love to ask our guests their coffee order because as you can see, we are big caffeine junkies. I'll call us at this point. So how do you start your day? What are you drinking?
2 cups of Stumptown coffee, 2 creams, 2 sugars, with the express instructions that when my kids wake up, they have to put the coffee maker on because they get up first and they know that my husband and I, if we need the coffee on, so it's like part of the routine. So.
Always hot, ever iced?
Yeah, hot in the morning, iced only in the afternoon.
Yeah. What is it about the afternoon? I prefer iced in the afternoon.
Gotta wake up, but
it's more palatable.
I agree.
And sugar, just straight up?
Yeah. I tried the Splenda thing, and then I looked into the data. I was like, it's not that much better, so I'm just doing straight sugar.
Well, you are a data gal, so that makes sense. That checks out.
All right, let's jump right in. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll kick it off because, as you know, Dr. Jen Lincoln,
ma'am,
I've been through quite the reproductive journey, and throughout, I have learned a lot about my body.
Yeah.
And I know others have a similar journey, and I've also learned that a lot of folks still don't know a lot about their bodies. And so I'm curious from your medical perspective, what contributes to this overall lack of understanding that seems to be quite prevalent?
Yeah, it's not because people don't want to know how their bodies work. Like, I think it's really important that, we say people don't understand and don't know where to get health care. It's not because they're not trying, but when you don't tell somebody or give them a roadmap to understand their body, how are they going to? So I think hopefully your listeners will appreciate this statistic that only 27 states and the District of Columbia mandate sex education. And that's not enough.
Wow.
You don't mandate it. I think we know it's not going to happen, right? Or it's not going to happen in the right way. But the even worse statistic is that only 16 states have it where it has to even be medically accurate or evidence-based. And I've said this repeatedly on my social media or when I give talks that I don't know what's worse, not having it or having it be completely inaccurate. And so I think that's the crux of it right there. So I went to Catholic schools all my life, and this is not to say anything about Catholicism as a religion, but traditionally in those schools, you only get abstinence-only education. So that's all I ever got. And I went to an all-girls high school, same thing. I didn't really know anything about my body other than if I had sex, I would get pregnant, get herpes, go to hell, and die, like in that order.
Yep.
And I just say that to highlight, like, I was not taught how to protect my body, but also, like, what's normal when it comes to periods. And we never talked about, if you want to get pregnant, here's what you should look out for. So that's the vast majority of the population going out into the world. And so, as you guys know, like, fertility, like, time matters. And so if you're not recognizing it till you're, you might have recognized it had you known the signs when you were 28, but now you're 38, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So when we don't teach people, or when we make it seem so shameful to talk about it, then we're not empowering people to understand how their body works. And if you don't know that there's something wrong, how are you going to speak up and ask for help? And then even when you do, are you going to be able to access a doctor? And that's a whole separate issue. So a lot of it is that we just don't know because we weren't told or given the tools or the language to speak. So I think that's the big thing, really.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to find a provider that you trust and that you can ask those questions. We've been learning a lot in recording these podcasts. And I didn't realize that a lot of like Gen Z and younger are getting their information from like TikTok.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm 43. I'm almost 44. Physician on TikTok. Like, what am I doing there? It feels ridiculous. Yeah. But I started on it just before the pandemic. And the reason is that I was doing education on Instagram, but other doctors were saying this is where people are getting their medical information from. So you need to be there. And there's so much misinformation out there. So to be there, to meet them where they are, they're not reading medical journals. They're not getting it in school. They're not watching Dateline or whatever.
Right.
We talk about it. So you have to be there. But the problem is that it's not always the best information. So
yeah, meeting people where they are is really important.
Yeah, no, we're super appreciative that you are on TikTok because it's like, that's foreign to me. I'm 36 and that platform scares me. I don't even touch it.
It means you're like more mature than
I don't know how to use it. I don't want any part of it. It just is very intimidating. But I thank you for being on there because it's, it's a lot of these very young people who are, like you said, spreading misinformation, getting misinformation. And so it's really nice to see someone who's so educated push real, accurate medical information out there. Being mindful, obviously, that you're not giving medical advice, which is general education is so great. What's the wildest piece of misinformation that a patient has come to you with? Like someone comes into your office, like let's say young 20s.
There's so much. I think that maybe the wildest thing I've heard is just the things that they really believe are true because they see it online. So I hear, well, birth control is going to give me cancer. It's a class 1 carcinogen. I hear that a lot. And that's because you'll see these wellness influencers who will say, well, your doctor never told you that the birth control pill is a class 1 carcinogen. And there's some truth in that. So that's why it's just enough to scare you. Because if you Google estrogen, yes, is a class 1 carcinogen. So is the sun. So is alcohol. But that part is never addressed. And the other thing that's never in those viral TikToks is that that birth control also prevents a lot of cancers too, or decreases your risk. And so when people come in or will message me and say, oh my God, I can't believe women are on this, or how come nobody's told this? And it's not that we're like keeping something from you, it's just that this little kernel of truth has been blown out of proportion, usually to scare you to buy a course or a detox or a cleanse or whatever. And I think those things bother me, these half-truths that get out there. I'm sure I have some other crazy stories as well, but...
that one's pretty bad.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So with all of this disinformation and misinformation and people claiming... I've seen people claiming to be doctors when they have no medical degree.
Oh, yeah.
How can people better educate themselves in particular about our fertility and our bodies and know that they're getting accurate information?
The good thing is, the internet, some days I wake up and I'm like, I wish it was never invented, social media. And then other days I'm like, this is how we fix all the problems, right? Because you can take it into your own hands. You can go, it doesn't matter if your school doesn't teach. You can go online. Like I didn't have that option when I was 14. And so you believed all the things. So I think that finding the good side of the internet is really important, but also there's really good resources like books and organizations out there. And so what I tell people is find somebody who seems trustworthy, who has credentials. So are they trying to make money from you? Are they an expert? And if they're an expert, are they an expert in this? Because I've seen chiropractors who are an expert in what they do giving advice out on birth control, and that is weird. It's like if I was giving you advice on strokes or things that I'm not an expert in, that would be just as sketchy. So find people who are experts who, what information do they have? What resources do they trust? I think leading medical organizations, they're not perfect. I definitely have issues with the American College of OB-GYN in other things, but at the core, those are evidence-based sources, and they've got lots of patient-facing education. The American Society for Reproductive Medicine has a fantastic patient-facing website. So going to these and not necessarily, it's hard, and especially when you're encountering situations when it comes to fertility, not going down a rabbit hole. But I don't mean you shouldn't be informed, but don't go down a rabbit hole where all of a sudden everything's a conspiracy, everything's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if somebody's trying to sell you something or tell you everything's horrible, that's a big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds weird, but there's lots of really good books and things out there. So and also, like, saying to your doctor, hey, I'm struggling with this. What would you recommend? What's a resource you trust?
Right.
I think can be really important. And if you see bad stuff out there, like, don't give it your mental headspace, because there's so much. Just block those accounts or report them for misinformation. But it's hard because it gets into your psyche, because that's how the algorithm works. It feeds you things, and then you start to go, oh my God, what am I doing? So
Right.
So I want to pivot a bit to fertility, because it's deeply personal for both me and Amanda, and increasingly common, unfortunately. So when a patient comes to you and they're, let's say, in their mid to late 20s, they're not in a relationship, what does an appointment look like for you? They're not considering starting a family anytime soon. Is there any education on egg freezing? When do you feel it's appropriate to bring up the topic yourself, proactively, if the patient hasn't said anything about wanting to start a family?
So for the past, I don't know how many years now, I have practiced only on labor and delivery as an OB hospitalist. So back in my clinic days, what I used to use when I would be in the office with a patient of that situation was the question of, do you want to start a family in the next year? Because that really helps you think about where you need to go, whether you're talking about birth control or the complete opposite of, like, have we thought about egg freezing or, that kind of thing. And I think it's so important because when I was training too, it was very much, what birth control do you need? Like, Amanda, you're obviously new birth, you're having sex. It was just, even postpartum, like, well, of course you want a Depo shot or something. It just felt like obviously everybody wants contraception, and not thinking past the next year and, like, down the road. So what I like about this kind of one question, which I think it was trademarked or whatever by Power to Decide, this one key question, which is you ask all your patients, is it really helps you figure out the conversation. And if they go, not next year, but maybe in 5 years, and let's say they're 35, then you have that conversation. Let's talk about what that looks like, and then step back and let's talk about your menstrual cycles, because unless it's bothering you, you might not bring it up. You might think, well, the fact that I haven't had a period in 6 months, like, I love that because I don't want to have a period, when actually that could be a red flag. So I think it's really important when you're talking to patients in their annual exam is you are not assuming what they want, and also educating them on what the warning signs are, so that if they eventually want to build a family, what might we need to think about today so that in 10 years, and what blows my mind is the year that I finished residency, I still remember egg freezing was considered experimental. And so I remember when I started seeing celebrities doing it, I was like, don't they know that's just like, oh my God. And so quickly, it has changed so much, which I think is phenomenal. And it's given so many women opportunities. And to now see more people talking about it, I think it's just great.
Okay, I want to unpack something you said, because you mentioned being aware of the signs of infertility and knowing what to look for. And that's something that I really wish that I had thought about in my 20s. Too late now. What should people be looking for? What are the signs?
It's not just like, oh, yeah, I don't have a period, or I barely have a period. Like, aren't I so lucky I don't need to buy the super heavy tampons or whatever. So this is a conversation. Sometimes it's like more with the parents when they're younger, if they come in for kind of that first meet and greet, or if they're at a pediatric visit. But if you haven't had a period by age 15, that's a red flag. That's, and it still might be normal, but it's enough outside the norm where we should make sure that we're not missing something else. If you haven't had a period by age 14, and you've got other signs that something could be going on, what we call hirsutism, so other signs of excess levels of hormones like testosterone, because that could be a sign of things like PCOS or androgen-containing tumors. If you haven't had a period 3 years after breast development, or what we call T-larky, so it's normal for breasts to develop first in girls. So if you have a daughter and her breasts have developed, keep an eye and say, okay, she should have her period within 3 years. If not, that's something we should look into. Or if your periods are happening too frequently, so closer together than every 21 days, or farther apart than every 45 days, or if you're not having a period for 3 months, even just for one cycle, that's a sign that we should look into it. Which I think not everybody knows about. And the things that we're looking for is we're looking for things like primary ovarian insufficiency. We're looking for things like hypothyroidism. Other autoimmune disorders can cause this. Sometimes too much stress or excess exercise, eating disorders can cause these things. Or it can be chromosomal too. So it's not just because you have one of these things, something's wrong, but it's a red flag. And we say that the menstrual cycle is a vital sign. So until we know, rather than just like, your periods are okay, cool. Like, the checkbox that sometimes you just get asked about the nitty gritty. Yeah. And then the other thing too, if your periods are really painful, horrible, and you just think that's normal, which everybody does on TikTok, by the way, every time I say, it's not normal for your period to hurt, I get yelled at. I'm like, no, common is different than normal.
Right.
But that could be a sign of endometriosis, which could absolutely contribute to fertility issues, or fibroids or adenomyosis. So it's a huge spectrum. And if you have had no education, or you have been taught somehow that like saying the word vagina is dirty, how are you going to walk into your first visit when you're 16 and feel like you can talk about it? Like it's a lot. So, but we need to be doing a better job of screening rather than just like, your periods are good, okay, move on. Like, you know, having sex, yes, no, okay, like let's do your pap smear or whatever.
Yeah. So if you have a patient that you suspect might be struggling with infertility, what does that process look like? What do you do next?
So as a generalist OB-GYN, they can start a basic workup, which means, looking into things like hormone levels, checking for thyroid levels.
And that's just a blood draw.
Yeah. Okay. If they've got more suspicious things where they're concerned about something like PCOS, they may order an ultrasound. They may also recommend starting to track ovulation to see if you're really ovulating or not. But I think the key is that you should have a really low threshold to refer somebody to a fertility workup, because I imagine you've probably heard these stories or have had them yourself where you're like, why didn't somebody refer me sooner? Like, the mantra of you're under 35, wait a year. Yes. And then get referred. If you're not ovulating, you do not wait a year. You go like right now.
I know. I have a question on that, actually, not to treat this as a personal consultation, but I kind of am. This is not my appointment. So I'm Jewish, and when you're Jewish, sometimes you get very hairy everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to preface it by saying that.
Yeah.
However, growing up, I was so hairy, guys. There was not a part of my body that didn't have hair on my lip. I mean, I spent my weekends, and this is very scarring. I feel like a lot of my issues today stem from my visits to the electrolysis every weekend with my mom, because I had a mustache, unibrow, everything. It turns out I had PCOS, but I continue to get extremely moody and emotional when I menstruate, and I'm wondering if that's connected to PCOS. And it's funny, I have a vivid memory of my mom. She's not going to like that I'm sharing this, but for some birthday or something when I was a teenager, she got me this pill box, and it said, my biggest fear is that there is no such thing as PMS, and this is just my personality. And that's, that kind of is me. I mean, actually, I don't know that you've been with me. You've experienced me on my period, but you'll let me know if it's accurate.
I appreciate the warning.
I appreciate just you'll know. So it's tricky. So sometimes we say, different ethnicities or what's normal in your family, right, when it comes to hair. But one sign is like if you're having to spend an excessive amount of time, money, that's probably a sign that something else is going on. And then you put in other criteria, like what we call anovulation, or you're not ovulating normally. If we did an ultrasound and saw a ton of follicles on your ovary, you put these things together, and then that could potentially be it. And the thing about PCOS is that there are treatments, as I'm sure you know now, that can prevent further hair growth and further of that hyperandronization, but it can't undo what's already there. And so when people sometimes don't even know that it's a problem, or that diagnosis and delay can be really scarring, because you've spent like 10 years of your life doing all of this, and it pain and cost, and so it's not easy.
Okay, but you still didn't answer my question about my moods. Do I need a mood stabilizer? Do I need a mood stabilizer, or is it? Can I connect this to the PCOS, or I'm just moody?
Yeah, well, so PMS or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like PMS on steroids.
I think I have that.
Which is, think of PMS, but it affects your daily life, right? So you can't work normally, you can't be around your friends normally, relationships may suffer, you may have thoughts of harming yourself or others. Like it's a real thing. And so we say PMS I think everybody kind of knows what that is, but a percentage of people have PMDD, which can be treated, and it can be seen more frequently in people who have things like PCOS, can be treated either with cycle suppression through things like birth control pills, which is, everybody says, my God, it's a Band-Aid. There's a reason for it. Or other things like SSRIs and therapy. And it usually responds really well to treatment too. So
okay, so there are all of these different potential diagnoses that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
There are lots of different specialists. There are lots of different options. What is your advice for people who are seeking a physician, and not just a specialist, but just a general OB-GYN? How do you know that you found the right one?
Yeah. I think I have like 1 or 2 YouTube videos on this because I'm so passionate about it, because it is not one size fits all.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like your date. I mean, they're going to be like all up in your vagina, right? Like, you should like them, you know? They're going to know like the deepest, darkest things about you. And I think that it's okay to kind of treat it like dating, where you want to find somebody who, you know, yes, a good doctor, but also somebody who you feel like you connect with. So and I'm sure you've experienced different doctors. I know I have some who are more serious and fact-based, and some people love that because they're like, just tell me what to do. And then there are others who are like, no, I kind of want to feel like I'm seeing a friend, and it just depends on your personality. So know what your personality is, know what you're looking for. Don't put a whole lot of stock in Google reviews, because just like when you go to Yelp, you either put in something that was amazing or something that's horrible. And sometimes what people attribute to the doctor themselves as being horrible is the insurance or the office or whatever. So just tread lightly, because oftentimes those are not great. And it's about access too. So starting with what your insurance covers, because we're in America and our healthcare is so great. So this is a long journey, and so much of which may not be covered when it comes to fertility stuff, but even just your basic obstetric or gynecologic care. Start with what's in your network and what you know is covered. And then don't feel like just because you met with somebody, you have to stick with them. This is something I always find kind of cute when so as an OB hospitalist, we see patients who come into labor and delivery, and they might just come in for a triage visit. And I've had a few patients who have said, you know, say, oh, you're following up with Dr. So-and-so. I'll make sure she gets this note. And they'll be like, Dr. Lincoln, I'm not sure. Like, I just don't love her. Like, what should I do? I want to switch to this other person I saw for one visit, but I'm really worried she's going to be mad at me. And I said, girlfriend, she is not going to even know. She's so busy. So, like, please don't feel that if you want to switch to somebody else because you had a visit and you're like, oh, I don't know if I like that, or I didn't feel like they listened to me or heard me. Like, go ahead and switch, and just know that it's okay. They're not going to get it. If they do, that's weird. Good thing you switched. And just, I just really think that this is your body, right? You should trust it with somebody who you feel like is respecting you. What I have found, so I'm in Oregon, in Portland, and what I find so interesting being on social media too is hearing, you know, how people say they were treated during their birth or what have you. And so I practice on the West Coast, and it's different than East Coast medicine in some way. Like, it's just, I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't have to take shit from anyone. Like, you deserve to be respected. You should not be talked down to. This is not 1950 where they're, you know, you should be treated like a human. And it stinks to have to call that out, but I realize I still have to, because I have people who say, oh, well, my doctor, when my pap smear hurt, they just said, oh, just stop. It's going to be 2 more seconds. Like, no, that's not normal. So it's a long-winded way of saying find somebody who, of course, is evidence-based, board-certified, all the things your insurance is going to pay for. But when you leave their office, you feel like you've got more answers than you left, with more questions than when you came in. Because if you did, like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And I want to talk about this idea of access that we're kind of dancing around, because you mentioned that you're in Oregon, which is very different than Texas. Yeah. And in places like Texas, we're seeing healthcare deserts where people literally do not have physical access to an OB-GYN that they can get to very easily, sometimes at all. What's your advice for people living in those areas?
I know. And it's not fair. So I'm right next to Idaho, which, I mean, ever since the fall of Roe and just people being afraid they're going to get arrested for doing their job, they're hemorrhaging doctors. So what's happening is OB-GYNs leave, and then labor and delivery units close, and then pediatric units close. So it's a huge issue. And 36% of American counties are maternal healthcare deserts, which means
36%.
36%.
Oh my gosh.
So 1 in 3 in their county, have no labor and delivery or no birth center, no OB-GYN or no midwife that can deliver their babies. And in Texas, like where you are in Texas is very different, and you can't just, they're like, well, this county, so you're just going to hop on over. It could be an hour drive or 2-hour drive or more.
What does that look like on the ground? Like someone goes into the hospital. Needs assistance, is about to go into labor, or is in labor, about to get, what happens?
Yeah. So in those situations, if they show up at a hospital where there is no obstetric provider, usually they'll call up the emergency room physician who, trust me, does not want that phone call.
Oh my gosh.
And they'll handle it. And it's not that, if everything goes fine, it goes fine. But it's when it doesn't go fine. And usually those are the cases, because somebody who's pregnant somewhere knows, like, I need to drive this hour to this hospital. But if they're not making it that hour because they're 26 weeks pregnant and they're bleeding, like, they know it's not going to go well. So what happens is people don't do well. Yes, we can life flight them out, and but sometimes people can't be sent by helicopter from Idaho or even the Oregon coast to where I am because of the weather.
Yeah.
And so then you're in an ambulance. So what happens is people don't do well, and they end up either not doing as well as they could or not making it because of this access issue. And so it's only going to get worse, too, as we see Medicaid cuts and more of these hospitals will be closing. So what I tell people, and I've made content about this on social media, which feels so not normal. Like, are we in the bizarro world? But thinking, where do you want to live if you are thinking of having a family? Like, think about that. If you get a job offer in New York City as opposed to rural Oklahoma, like that, it means a lot of things.
Yep.
But you have to think about what it means if you can access a doctor. And all of this stuff that I said about how to pick a good doctor goes out the window if there's only one of them in town.
You don't have a choice.
And so I acknowledge that when I say these things, it's a very privileged thing to be able to even pick your doctor.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
just thinking that our listeners in those states should only be so lucky to have that luxury.
And then what do? They go online and they're like, well, I don't know what to do because the doctor in my town, he knows everybody and it's weird, or I don't feel hurt. Like, so you go online and you hope that you find some good stuff, or you don't. And then this is why we see worse maternal morbidity mortality, neonatal morbidity mortality in places where these things don't exist. It's not, we get the exact outcome we're set up to get.
Right.
Yeah, of course. So let's pivot just a bit and let's talk about the flip side of that coin, right? When things go well. So obviously, a lot of our listeners are very familiar with infertility. Some are struggling with it on their own. As an L&D, did you say hospitalist? Okay. Yeah. As an L&D hospitalist, when patients do get access to their wonderful if they've been struggling with infertility and they're now successfully pregnant, they're about to deliver a baby, what do you want them to know? What do you tell them?
It's so fun. Those are, I always get asked, like, what are my favorite stories? Because everybody wants to know, like, what's the worst story on labor and delivery? I'm like, we don't want to talk about that. But my favorite stories are the people who've dealt with fertility issues and are, like, there having their baby, or the gestational carriers, the surrogates, and they come in. And we just had one a couple weeks ago. And everybody's like, oh, my God. I want them to know when they come in that it's, I'm saying, like, oh, it's so amazing. But I recognize that for them, it might still be the most terrifying day of their life, because I mean, we've talked about this, right? Until you have that baby in your arms, I don't think you believe that there's going to be a good outcome, because you have gone through so much. Like, I think it is so hard to be in that scenario, and you come in and you hear these stories of people around you, like, oh, she's here having her 6th baby, her 5th baby. And you're just like, do you even know how hard it was to get to this point? So I think it's okay to just know that you can be stressed out, you can be freaking out, you can be snippy with people. And I think it's really important to just be honest with your nurse and your doctor or your midwife and be like, yeah, I'm here. I'm so excited. I'm here for my induction or whatever. I'm here because I'm in labor, but I'm really scared and I have control issues because I've had to have this. So I feel like this is the one thing I haven't been able to plan. So now I don't know how to not plan and know everything. I mean, I've seen this spectrum. And some people come in and they're like, this is great. And others are just freaking out until, and just tell your team so that we can help you. Some people want every little bit of information. Others are like, I'm finally ready to let go. And like, please just get me my healthy baby and I'll be good. So I think it's okay. And when I discharge my patients, we talk about all the things to look out for: bleeding and pain, blah, blah, blah. But I always finish every discharge instructions with the number one complication of childbirth is not preeclampsia. It's postpartum depression, anxiety. And it's more likely if you've had something happen unplanned.
Yeah, of course.
And if you've dealt with fertility, I want you to know, like, you count.
Yeah.
That counts. So I want you to look out for these things, and here's what we're going to look for. And if you don't already have somebody, like, be aware, because what you're going to go home to potentially is everybody's like, oh, are you finally happy now? You got your baby? Like, isn't everything great? And now they're here and they're on the outside. And you're like, you know, you've been so focused on this that maybe you haven't even allowed yourself to prepare for other things because you just assumed it would never happen. So let all the shoulds like go out of the window and just tell people what you need. And just like I tell my kids, like, you feel a feeling, that's how it gets better. You don't tell yourself you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And just ask for help, and don't feel like however other people have reacted or told you, you should be happy now. Why are you so anxious? You finally got your baby. Like, you have my permission to, like, you know, maybe not, but like punch them in the face. But yeah, it's a lot. And for some people, it's like this beautiful moment. And for others, you can just tell they're like so guarded, and whatever, like, however it needs to be is okay. Just talk to people.
Yeah.
And tell them what you need.
That
you know?
trust and that honesty is probably, I mean, it is so important, and it's probably something that you can only have by finding the right provider. Okay, now I'm going to hijack the conversation to be my personal consultation, because I just thought of something. This might be a very dumb question, and I apologize if it is. But as someone who will have to use a gestational surrogate or gestational carrier, can I have postpartum depression, or is it specifically like a hormonal thing?
Yeah, no. So and I should say too, like, we've changed the terms to be perinatal mental health disorders, because it includes like pregnancy. It can happen in pregnancy as well as afterwards. And that's such a great question, like, using that terminology, because we say that it can be diagnosed up to 12 months afterwards. And I think that, I mean, yeah, like, who cares if yes, there's a hormonal component for sure. Okay. But there's also like a sleep deprivation component. There's all the things related to it. And so I would also say, like, it doesn't matter what it's called, right? But yes, you could absolutely have those same symptoms, whether or not a psychiatrist documents in your chart that it's perinatal or postpartum depression versus just, you know, acute depression or whatever. But yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, because you're going through all of these things too. It doesn't matter if what uterus they came out of, right? You're still dealing with all that as well.
It's sort of like psychosomatic, I feel, because I had my daughter be a gestational carrier, and I swear I was nesting. And I know that that's a thing that comes from hormones, but not you're actually carrying your own child. But all of a sudden, I like started cleaning the entire apartment, which is not like me, by the way, and just preparing for her arrival in a way that didn't come naturally to me, and like I had nothing to attribute it to other than this like nesting phenomenon.
Well, evolutionarily it makes sense, right? Like, you're preparing to bring your baby home, and maybe there's literature on this. I would love, like, what if we looked at certain markers, hormonal markers or whatever, stress, cortisol, in people who are expecting a baby via gestational carrier versus another, you know, it'd be really cool to see. Like, I'm sure somebody could.
Because there's so much funding for women's healthcare research.
Although, good news, I just read today, Bill Gates just pledged $2.5 billion to women's health research, including menopause, including all these things.
Wow,
that's so amazing. You all need to get in on that.
Yeah.
Well,
just today.
We've only been filming a podcast the entire day. In this
You've been a little busy.
Wow.
So write him a note.
That's amazing.
Like, Bill, you know, let's get some here. Let's do that. Because it would be a cool study, right?
Yeah.
It would be
and
amazing.
I imagine there would be very similar things, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so
we'll
now I'm going off script a little bit, but now I'm curious. When there is funding like this available, how are different studies prioritized? Like, how do they decide which study?
Don't get me started.
Listeners, she's rolling her eyes. What are we going to get?
So the good ones just don't make you prove that it needs to be done that. And like, they, you know, you do your pitch or you do your submission and they're like, this sounds great, we'll fund you. And the ones that aren't so good make you do like a 50 or 60 page submission. And then you have to prove why what you want to do aligns with all their values. And then they have all these crazy reporting requirements. And sometimes the philanthropic world, when it comes to funding, they make it harder. It's almost like more work. Like, you need to hire somebody just to get the damn money to. So, but usually each philanthropy or each group of donors, they decide what matters to them. And then you apply and they decide whether or not that falls within what they want to look for. So there'll probably be a call for topics that will come out, and you'll see if you apply, you know, if you're there, and then you'll apply. But sometimes just trying to get the money is like 2 full-time jobs. And then you have to do the research.
Right.
So some places are starting to be more what we call like trust-based philanthropy, which is like, trust me, we're legit, we're good. Please just let us cook. And we give us the money and we promise it will result, as opposed to micromanaging every, we need to meet once a week and we need to submit whatever. And I get it. Like, you don't want to just be writing a check for $1 million and doing whatever.
Sure.
But we are so far behind when it comes to research, right? And now we're seeing it even harder to get some research. Like, just please trust the experts who are doing this,
So true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, if you could conduct one study tomorrow, have all the funding fully funded, what would it be?
Oh, my God. Oh, that's such a good question. I would want to know, how do we get all of the bad information off the internet? Like, how do we get a good algorithm that accurately takes away the bad stuff but doesn't suppress the good stuff? And it might sound weird, like, why are we looking at that? Because that is like still going to be the stopgap for a long time, I think, to get people education. I don't know.
That's a good
lot
one.
More, but that'd be a good one, right?
Yeah, I
I'd
think
support
with
that.
AI, that's
You think it would
doable.
be?
Yeah.
You think it would be?
Some filters.
You would think that would be nice. But yeah, I mean, we see all these good accounts getting kicked off because they said the word vulva once.
Ugh.
But then somehow some wackadoodle who's got 6 million followers who will sell you this detox, like somehow she's fine, but somebody who's just trying to show you what normal anatomy is. So
Yeah, it's broken.
it's a little broken.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been very informative and
this is great.
fun and lovely. I mentioned that I visited Tulane recently. It was my first time in, is it New Orleans or New Orleans?
Oh, it depends.
Yeah.
It's New Orleans. But some of them will say New Orleans. Like, do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? But it never really should be Nolans, like, unless you're like really from it. Yeah. Did you have some beignets when you were there from Cafe Du Monde?
Yes.
Good.
And I also went to this amazing like diner by Tulane. It was
Camellia Grill?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking at, my husband over there. We would go there and we would eat. We would get the entire thing and the fries and the chocolate freeze. And it was probably
the pie.
2,500 calories.
Oh my goodness. Did you have the pie?
I never got a pie. I don't think we ever did get the pie. No, we always got the chocolate freeze.
I didn't get that.
Oh,
So I
well,
took
next
it
time.
back.
I need to make a trip to New Orleans. It sounds like.
I know you do like all your like, healthy and don't be exposed to whatever. But you make an exception.
Totally.
It's all about balance.
Yes.
Balance.
No, but it's like the whole authentic
Oh, yeah.
New Orleans experience.
I love New Orleans.
Yeah.
I know. We need to get back. That's where we got married, and we were there during Hurricane Katrina. That's what really opened my eyes, like, to even more of like access and what happens when you live in a place where you can't get these things, or you're literally stuck, and anyway. But and it's not fair that depending on your zip code, you can get access to healthcare, access to fertility care if you don't have a specialist in your area.
That's why we're starting it at Sloane to fix that.
Helping to solve that problem. Because it shouldn't matter where you live.
Nope, sure shouldn't. Especially in this country where we spend the most per capita. We should be able to get some decent healthcare. But anyway, so if you can just fix that problem, that'd be great.
We're working on it.
No problem. You fix the internet. We'll fix access to reproductive care, and it's going to be a beautiful world.
It's a great team.
Well, thank you so much for
you.
taking the time. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. It's so fun. We could talk about this stuff all day long.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Over some pie.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was so fun, you guys.
Was fun.